Hi, this is Rishi,
Daniel, Hector,
Max.
and you're watching Crash Course.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Science rules.
Hey, that's the wrong intro.
Alright, I got it. Now you're watching Crash Course.
On today's episode, we will be discussing limited war. After World War II, the US and the Soviet emerged as superpowers and then competed with each other to become the dominating force in the world. This competition led to what we call limited war. Limited war can be defined as being a war where not all military arsenal and economic resources are devoted to war in order to avoid military conflict on a global scale. During the beginning of World War II, countries used their complete military arsenal to defeat their enemy. However, after the use of atomic bombs, Fat Man and Little Boy in Japan, the fear of total destruction, MAD, caused countries to restrict their use of military forces.
A prime example of limited war was the Korean War.
Fat woman, my
Hey, I'm with the Axe Gang.
ass gang, my
Boss!
boss, my
I will sue you for this.
sue me, my
How about a date?
date, my
A snake?
ass.
You just wait. I will call for backup.
Like anybody would back you up, you nitwit. I can hardly wait.
The Korean War began with the North Korean invasion of South Korea. The invasion consisted of 75,000 Soviet-backed North Korean soldiers crossing the 38th parallel, starting the first militaristic conflict of the Cold War. Due to containment, a policy created to seize the spread of communist ideals, the United States decided to join forces with South Korea in an attempt to avoid a communist victory. The Korean War portrays a clear image of limited war through the United States' involvement and refusal to allow an escalation into direct conflict with China in fear of nuclear war. The U.S. also worked to create an armistice with North Korea in order to avoid direct conflict with the USSR and other possible global conflicts. Hey look, there's a thought bubble here. What's that thought bubble? Oh, I agree. Douglas MacArthur was born on January 26, 1880 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and was the leading general for the U.S. in the Korean War. Along with Harry Truman, MacArthur was on the front line against the communists North Korea and China. The two made a vow that nuclear weapons would only be used if China used an airstrike first. In the end, MacArthur won several key battles, like the Battle of Incheon, and signified the armistice that halted war in Korea. For his services, MacArthur was awarded with numerous awards, including the Purple Heart. The war eventually ended in July of 1953 with the divide in the Korean Peninsula along the 38th parallel between the Communist North and Democratic South.
Another example of limited war during the Cold War is the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was instigated by the emergence of communist leader Ho Chi Minh. The rise of communism in Vietnam sparked the interest of the U.S. as their policy of containment was meant to keep the spread of communism contained. As a result, a war broke out between the Northern Communist Viet Cong and China versus the Southern Republic of Vietnam and the U.S.
Time is it?
Oh look, it's open letter time. Dear Ho Chi Minh, Although we perfectly understand your struggle to establish your own state and escape the captivity of colonialism, communism is not the way to go. We would greatly appreciate if you were to accept our democratic ways and withdraw your Viet Cong troops. Sincerely, the United States. The reason this was limited war was because when the U.S. joined forces in Vietnam, they didn't want to push too far into northern Vietnam in fear of provoking China into a larger war. Or would China could result in the decimation of millions of people and the collapse of economic systems. In the end, the U.S. pulled out of Vietnam because of the high cost of war and the unpopular view of the public towards the war.
The good thing about Vietnam is there was always some place to go. Fire in the hole! Go, check out that hole. And there was always something to do.
The concept of limited war was a major theme during the Cold War, as neither superpower wanted any localized conflict to escalate into another global war. The threat of mutually assured destruction is what caused both the US and USSR to practice limited warfare in the fear of the possible extinction of the human race. And so each superpower focused competition with each other elsewhere, in things such as the space race, in which both the US and the Soviet Union rushed to be the first to launch a man into space. The Cold War ended in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union, thus ending the practice of limited warfare, with the United States emerging as the lone superpower.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Today's episode was brought to you by our teacher, Mrs. Watts, and our scriptwriters, Daniel, Hector, and Rishi. We all hope you never tune in again.